In Conversation with Terry Shepard, award-winning broadcaster, narrator, and author. A deep dive into the writer's craft with the artists and support systems who create the stories we love.
Thanks, Lisa. Gregory C. Randall, Michigan-born and Chicago-raised, has made the San Francisco Bay Area his home for more than 50 years. Greg is the author of 5 different mystery thriller series: the Shannon O'Mara Chronicles, the Detective Tony Alfano Noir series, his World War II Max Adler OSS books, his Deputy Sheriff Jordan Tynes Modern Western, and Venice Black, featuring Detective Alexandra Polonia, based in Cleveland, Ohio. Greg also wrote the award-winning young adult novel The Cherry Pickers and founded Windsor Hill Publishing in collaboration with his wife. Greg Randall's latest, Blood in the Yellowstone, book 3 in his Jordan Tynes series, was released in October, and the Marigold Gang is set for release in December. Greg joins us on the program with the 411 on Blood in the Yellowstone.
Shamelessly, I was chasing down a new marketing angle for a new series of books. I thought, Montana, I love Montana. We love to go up there, fly fish the Yellowstone and Madison and the Spring Creeks. And it's a beautiful area up there. And of course, we change our nameplates before we go up there for fear that someone's going to shoot us with California nameplates on the car. But it's a 2 or 3 day drive up. We get to go through Idaho and some other beautiful areas. While we were up there, I'm thinking it'd be really great. I could do a new series. I love series with women as the primary protagonist, whether it's Sharon O'Mara or Alex Polonia, or in this case, Jordan Tynes. And she is a deputy sheriff wanting to become the coroner who is going to retire. And in the process, in One Yellow Dog, the first book, there's a shooting and the sheriff is killed, and eventually she is named the interim acting sheriff. And that's led to 3 books. One Yellow Dog, the second is The Killings in Paradise Valley, third being Blood in the Yellowstone, which just came out this October. The character is, I'm trying to show her as being competent, not naive. She wants to be a police officer. She went to college and got a degree in criminal law, or in criminology. She was in the National Guard for a period of time, spent a tour in Iraq with the Montana National Guard. And she came back and signed up to work in the Sheriff's Department of Park County. It's been great because I've gotten to know the real sheriff of Park County, Brad Bitchler, who is newly elected. He's been sheriff now 4 or 5 years. He just loves the series, and he and I go back and forth. And I'm not sure how he feels about my making the sheriff a woman, but he's gotten a kick out of it. And so we're actually working on the 4th in the series right now, tentatively called Fire Neck Mountain. And I'm working on the outline and everything, and hopefully that'll be out in the spring.
Tell us about the Marigold Gang.
My wife and I go to this little diner for breakfast, and every Wednesday or Thursday, in fact, we were there last Thursday, and sitting right behind us were 6 old guys. I say old guys, they're my age, but we're all old guys. And it's whether it's the same 6 or a different 6 every morning, they're there at 7 o'clock. And all of us who go to diners for breakfast, whether it's in your case, do you go to the Metro Diner in Jacksonville? Oh, one of my favorite spots. You can see the same thing, 7 o'clock in the morning, and there's a group of 4 or 5 guys in the back. Now, as I said, they could be a prayer group. They could be old friends. They could be plotting the overthrow of the country. Who knows? But they're there. And we've all seen it. So I said, okay, there's got to be a story there. So I created this fictitious group who all grew up on Marigold Court in a suburban environment, south side of Chicago, in a town I wrote a biography about called the town's Park Forest, Illinois, but I renamed the town Lincolnville. And it sits right on US 30, so it's got a sort of a South Side vibe going for it, which I know exceptionally well. And these 6 guys have been together for now 60 years, 65 years, through marriages, deaths, grandchildren, just everything that we all been through. And one of their group, Alan, passes away, dies of a stroke, and Alan's daughter, Barbara, asked the guys to help clean out his house. She lives in California. She can't really do it. She's known these guys, and they all volunteer. So they all get together. The dumpster is put on the driveway of this little single-level ranch home in the south side of Chicago. And they get in there and find out that Alan was a hoarder. The place is it's just a shambles. And it's got a dodgy history. Alan's parents were with murder-suicide back in early 90s. And as they start going through the house, they find a 1963 Studebaker Lark in the garage with 600 miles on it. How can that be? They've never seen the car, and yet it's in the garage. And of course, the joke goes, once we get to the basement, wait till we find out. And of course, the joke is Stephen King was writing this story. That's where it'd be. And yeah, when they get to the basement, they find 4 bodies in 2 cold spot Sears freezers.
We're in conversation with Greg Randall. His latest is Blood in Yellowstone, and The Marigold Gang is due out in December. Take us inside your head as you were thinking through the plot of The Marigold Gang.
Okay, what would happen when you walk into a hoarder's house and he's your friend? You've known him forever. So you don't want to think bad, but at the same time, you know the story of why everything is there. So it was a great write. I had a lot of fun putting it together. Whether there's a follow-up, I retitled it. The original title was 4 Bodies in the Freezer. It's now been recast a little bit, the mystery of the 4 bodies in the freezer. Whether it now can roll over and become another Marigold Gang title remains to be seen. I'm not sure whether we're going to do a 2nd or 3rd or 5th. I love series. I love to really dive into the characters. But in this case, is there really a future for the Marigold Gang? 75 years old, running out of time. I don't know. So it is definitely a cozy. I haven't used the F word once in the whole book. There's in the classic, by the time they're done, there's lots of dead bodies. Some of them have been frozen for 60 years, but that's a whole other story. Now, it's actually this story. So, Terry, it was fun. So between Jordan and the Marigold Gang, that's been keeping me busy this past summer.
You have gone the traditional publishing route, the self-publishing route, and you have your own publishing company. Which way are you going with the Marigold Gang?
The Marigold Gang is self-published. My wife and I have had our own publishing company now for almost 15 years. Actually, longer than that. She was writing garden books on England back in the 90s. And so, unfortunately, we had to go and spend weeks in England traveling and looking at gardens. And she would write the books. I would do the artwork and the camera work. So she produced 4 guidebooks on England, and then all under the auspices of our company, Windsor Hill Publishing. Since then, we've published all of the books except 2 under Windsor Hill Publishing. And then 2.5 years ago, I was recommended by my agent at the time to talk to Wolfpack Publishing, which is an up-and-coming publishing house out of Vegas focused on Westerns through Wolfpack Publishing. I just finished the first draft for Blood for One Yellow Dog with the first book in the Jordan Tynes series. They loved it. They saw an opportunity that maybe if I hung in there, they could have in their publishing house a Craig Johnson or a C.J. Box in their house if my books can catch hold. It takes time to build the audience. So they offered me a contract, and I said, super. And then Mike Bray, who owns Wolfpack, said, what else you got? And I said, I've got these other 17 books that are sitting out there. And he says, I want them. And I said, what do you mean you want them? He says, yeah, I want to republish them. I want to rebrand them. We can put them into series. So we can put all this Sharon O'Mara's out in a series, and the Max Adler's, and we'll bring out the Tony Alfano Chicago Detective series, and we'll box them up and put them out. And I thought that was a great idea. And of course, it's all on the come. You hope you can sell to make some money. The deal's a pretty clean deal as long as we sell books. And there you are. I took my rights back from Thomas Mercer, who is an imprint of the Amazon world. We brought out 2 books with them, the Alex Bologna series, and that was Venice Black and Saigon Red, 2 thriller, espionage thriller, international thrillers. When, as it always happens with the publisher, they run out of interest and have new shiny objects to go talk to, those 2 books languished for a couple of years. And within the scope of my contract, I could ask for and get the rights back to the books, which I did, and they granted. And then we reissued them earlier this year. New covers, same stories. We were able to bring over all of the reviews, those 2 books had audibles connected to them. So we were thrilled that I was able to have those books in-house, because I had written a 3rd one, St. Petersburg White, in that series. And now I'm working on a 4th called London Black that is in serious outline form. I'm about a quarter into it. Hopefully it'll be out maybe next year, fall. And that'll be under Windsor Hill Publishing, not under Wolfpack. So there's no moss or anything under these shoes, I'll tell you. It's just more fun writing than you can imagine. You're a writer, and pretty fast when it comes to putting a story together. I don't angst over it. It's like television series. I'm sure they would never get one done if they angst over every episode.
Gregory C. Randall is our guest. His website is gregorycrandall.info, and his books can be found on just about every platform in both digital and paperback. You're also a gifted graphic artist and cover designer. How did that become a part of your skill set?
Terry, I was an architect for 50 years. Architect, landscape architect, urban designer. My wife and I had our own company for 25 years. I've got a list of projects that I figured I've done probably over 1,000 communities and designs. A third of them have been built. So I've designed hundreds of thousands of homes, mostly in California and the West, in the private sector, and which kind of led to my writing my first book, which was America's original GI town, Park Forest, Illinois, which was one of the first master plan communities after World War II. And it led to where we are now. Good or bad, you can drink your poison however you want to take it. But that has always, I've always been an artist, always been involved in art, and being a planner and designer, was able to enjoy that passion and get paid handsomely for it. When it came around to getting in writing books, as about 2010, which isn't very long ago in the world of publishing and everything, everything flipped. Things changed dramatically during that period of time. Economics were a disaster. The iPad had just come out. I can't tell you the exact year, but you know what I mean. Suddenly you could download dozens of books. I remember flying back from the East and having one of the first Sony e-readers sitting there in my lap because I was so intrigued with this thing and people would say, "What is that? What are you reading? What is that?" Even laptops were a rarity on airplanes at that point. And I said, "Well, it's this Sony e-reader, and it's a book." And people were just dumbfounded by it. Long before Kindle, long before Steve Jobs and the iPad and all the apps and everything else, which remarkably changed everything. Moving forward, we can now write in Word, convert to InDesign, have books published in an hour. Amazon decides to suddenly become the new Gutenberg of the world, and suddenly 2 million authors are born overnight. Then again, there's, instead of 100,000 competing authors at a publishing, in the traditional publishing world, we're now 2 million people we're competing to sell books to. But the world, in fact, the other day, we offered on Free Booksy, which is a whole other discussion to have about marketing in books, a whole other world there to talk about. But we put White Rabbit, one of my standalone mysteries, which is through Wolfpack, up free for Free Booksy. And at the end of 5 days, with one day being heavily marketed by Free Booksy last Thursday, this is just fresh, we had downloads of almost 3,550 books we gave away. I gave away, which amounts to about 0.002 cents per book that handed out. Now, that means I now have 3,500 new friends who are looking at and will eventually, hopefully, get to White Rabbit, enjoy the story, and then we'll look at my other books. And that costs us $100. Now, I can't get to 3,500 people without doing 50 book tours at $1,000 a stop to get to that point. So the point of, with computers and access and the internet and the Amazon, and these books were given away in Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, Germany, France, Brazil, Spain, Italy, even the Netherlands got a freebie. So you tell me, Terry, how we can access, as an author sitting in our little garrets where we write, and can access the world without leaving a chair. That is the exciting part of it. And it's just trying to keep up that momentum. And there's a lot of authors who've learned how to do it. Mark Dawson, and I'm talking on the independent side, because seriously, once you wait on Amazon, like I did with Thomas Mercer, that was great. And in the first 2 years, we sold 25,000 books. And of course, they keep the lion's share of it. I got a nice retainer, but they keep the lion's share of it. And then when they lose interest, what are you going to do? There's other things that they want to do, new authors, and they bring more people on until they find those 5, 10, or 15 who really click and continue to produce for their audience or for their customer reader base. And I know a lot of those guys, and they're great writers, and Thomas Mercer's making a good living, and so are they from them. But we were just dumbfounded to see, because normally in our Free Booksies we give away 1,500, 1,800, but this was 2.5 times that. So, Terry, when 2010 hit, remarkably things changed for the publishing industry, I think super for writers. The proof is always in the quality of the writing and the quality of the product, but the access is no longer there. The access is always there now for a writer. So if you am afraid of selling books, just write the book. You can get it out there. You'll find an audience. In time, maybe even find an audience that you can make a living at. I'm still looking.
We are in conversation with Gregory C. Randall. Blood in Yellowstone is out now. The Marigold Gang debuts in December, and he's just given us a masterclass in product marketing in the independent publishing sector. And that's the key question every writer ultimately faces. How do we sell the book?
It is difficult. I've talked to some writers who spent literally thousands and thousands of dollars selling a book, hoping that it'll catch fire and make them not only, you invest $1,000 in marketing a book, you have to sell almost 10,000 copies of the book to make that $1,000 back. It's crazy. It's very expensive. Putting the ego aside and everything else, just the cost becomes incredibly. It's like you're chasing your tail. You keep going around and around. Obviously, I'm nuts because I've now written 25 novels, and none of them have made me a lot of money. And yet I know some others, Colleen Hoover and some others who are selling 2 million books a year, good friends of mine who are selling millions of copies. And I think it's wonderful. But as a good friend and writer, Robert Dagoni told me, he says, all of that is great. And I've known Bob a long time. And he said, but the one thing every writer needs more than anything else is luck. It's that one moment, that one opportunity when the urban legend is that Ronald Reagan was walking to his airplane or the helicopter from the White House, and he had a stack of books under his arm. And, what are you reading, Mr. President? And he says, oh, I really found this really great book that I'm reading now. It's called Hunt for the Red October. And a career is made by one reference to a book by one author. It's now, he's gone, sadly, but the institution's still there. Those Tom Clancy books are still coming out. The Jack Ryan and whoever actor wants to play him today is out there, one after the other, one after the other. So all of a sudden, in one brief second, one man says one thing about a book, and a whole career has changed. So we're all looking for the president to hold up my book. Now, I want to pick my president who's holding it up. I don't necessarily want any president to hold it up. But the marketing becomes this serious problem for every author that's out there who wants to make a living, or at least an attempt to cover his costs. Me, it's an excuse to travel. All my books are, or at least the majority of them, have some international aspect to them. I've traveled extensively in Europe. I have to admit I've not been to Saigon, though, again, the tools we have as authors between YouTube, the tools we have with Google Earth, with the instant reference materials we can find, even down to photographing locations using Google Earth and other things that you might never leave your office or leave your garret where you write, because so much of it is available. Unfortunately, I do like to drink in bars that are in places like Rome and Paris, Barcelona, which I can't do in the privacy of my office. But again, the computer and the internet have made it so much richer for us as writers to be able to tell more complete, more detailed stories. And of course, now the next big thing is, how do we deal with the artificial intelligence, the AI, creeping into it, and whether we want to experiment with it. I feel like a 14-year-old finding a porn book. It's like, what is this? What was exciting about this? Let me try it over here when no one's looking. I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Gregory C. Randall is our guest. GregoryCRandall.info is the website. At any given time, Greg, you have 4 to 5 books in process. Why do you write?
I'm 74 years old, and I'm really afraid I'd become an alcoholic and sit around alone. My wife wouldn't talk to me anymore if I didn't do something at least 4 or 5 hours a day to keep my head straight. Putting that confession aside, I love the ability to construct a story. To be in every story is a construction. You start with your premise. You start with your overall concept. You start developing in your head characters. You start developing where it's going to be, what kind of story. I've got a 7-page list of genres that are out there that you can pick from. Gay, lesbian, space monsters on Mars is actually a genre. You tell me. We've got quilters who are solving murders. And then, of course, on the other hand, we have Jack Reacher, who is a psychological, interesting nightmare in his own right, out there setting the world correct. There are so many opportunities for us as writers to create a world, a story. I've written in science fiction, young adult, thrillers, mysteries. The Marigold Gang is a pure cozy, unabashedly. I've written in some genres that people aren't even sure exist anymore. To me, it's more experimenting with a story, experimenting with an idea, and see if something. I've got probably 10 books I've abandoned after 20, 30,000 words, not because it isn't interesting. It's just you run up into a wall. You say, can I push this through? Is it going to feel like it's been pushed through to make it happen? Or does another story come together so quickly? One of my favorite characters is Tony Alfano. He's a Chicago detective, 1933. He was a constructed story character with the full intent of revolving around the Chicago World's Fair of 1933, and as a detective in an Irish police force, and he's Italian, just after the period of time with the Al Capone and the mob, which is still in town, and a very corrupt political system. He's fighting for justice in the true sense of getting the bad guys, making sure they go to jail or pay for what they do. And he's one of my favorite characters to write, because it's a black and white world from Tony Alfano's standpoint. There's no gray. He's not riding the edge. He's not thinking, I can do this if I do that, where everybody around him is taking money or is in some way involved in the nastiness going on in Chicago at that period of time. So there's 5 books in that series, and I'm hoping to get back to it. But when you sit down to start a new book, when I do, I've really started to spend time developing the characters. And I'll end up with a 15 or 20 page book or booklet with character descriptions, birth dates, parents, the usual physical attributes, psychological attributes. I'll go online and find a picture of somebody who may look like the character I have in my mind, post it in my Word doc. So when you're done and you can look at this, and here's the bad guys, and here's the good guys, and here's what they look like to me, and no one will ever see that except me. But I know that as I'm going through it, there's an authenticity to those characters that I hope is there. And then that goes with when you had asked about how much research into the locations and the historical aspects, even as much of that too, because I'll have another whole section on, in the case of my Max Adler series, it takes place in Cairo in 1945 after the war. One of the principal characters is a Messerschmitt 262, which has been smuggled into Egypt and is going to be used to attack the budding state of Israel. So what do I do when I'm in Alaska, walking down a street in Juneau. There's this great hardware store, or hobby store. It's fantastic. What do? I buy a metal jet plane, which is the ME-262. It actually made the front cover. I took a picture of that and made the front cover of the book when I put it out. So to me, that kind of detail, it can get you in trouble. There's guys out there, if there's two things you don't want to screw up in your writing, is trains and train schedules and guns. I admitted at our Bouchercom conference, which you and I were sitting at, that all my characters carry 911s, Glocks, all these things. Jordan's got this Winchester new model 306, and I've never fired one of those guns in my life. So how can I be as exact as I am and still not be that authentic? So I have to admit some failing on my part when it comes to that.
Gregory C. Randall has one of the most creative minds writing today. His latest, Blood in Yellowstone, is available in both paperback and digital at Amazon. The Marigold Gang comes out in December. And you can find him on the web at gregorycrandall.info. A fascinating conversation, my friend. Let's do it again soon.
I would love to. This has been great.
In Conversation with Terry Shepard is a copyrighted presentation. All rights reserved. I'm Lisa Davis. Join Terry Shepard next time in Conversation.